Diving into our first three offensive coordinator candidates, and Brian Daboll is the only one that comes out checking all the blocks.
You are Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the number one sports podcast network in the world. I'm David Harrison, your guy on the ground, credentialed member of the media, covering the Washington Commanders for WUSA 9, also writing for Commanders on SI. And of course, I'm here with you 5 days a week, even into the offseason. Coming up on today's episode, we're going to take a closer look at what makes former New York Giants head coach Brian Daboll the number one option to be the next offensive coordinator for the Washington Commanders. We're also going to discuss why the offensive coordinator has to coach the entire unit. It all starts, of course, with the quarterback. But first, we're going to dive into our top three offensive coordinator candidates and why Brian Daboll is the only one of the three that checks every single block. All of that coming up on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And it's all brought to you by FanDuel. The wild card round is here, and FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. So visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your Profit Boost Pack every NFL playoff game day. We are diving into our first three offensive coordinator candidates, and Brian Daboll is the only one of the three that checks every block for what we are looking for the next offensive coordinator of the Washington Commanders. Of course, this coming off of the heels of the news that Kliff Kingsbury and the Washington Commanders have mutually agreed to part ways. That is the reports confirmed by the team that indeed Kliff Kingsbury no longer is the offensive coordinator, or confirmed by a source within the team, I should say, that Kliff Kingsbury no longer the offensive coordinator of the Washington Commanders, which means, of course, there is now a search for the next one. Who's going to be the next guy or gal, and most likely guy, because that's just the coaching profession, who's going to lead Jayden Daniels and this offense, and what are the criteria, right? So I think that when we simplify the criteria, you're looking for someone who can teach, someone who can provide structure, and someone who, quite honestly, I think can challenge Jayden Daniels to expand his game beyond what he's already capable of doing, which could be a very scary thing if you think about what Jayden Daniels could be capable of on top of what he's already capable of. And again, we're just looking at three here today. These episodes are 22 to 25 minutes per episode on target. Like, that's the goal for every episode. So we cannot talk about every single offensive coordinator candidate out there. But if you've been paying attention to the interweb, and even if you haven't now, even if you haven't, I'll tell you now, there are a lot of candidates out there. So we will talk about as many as we can up until the time that there is a hire made. Of course, if there's a hiring, then we're not going to talk about candidates anymore because there's no reason to talk about candidates, right? So these first three, again, not the only three, but the first three, we'll kind of update our rankings as we go. Brian Daboll comes in at number one. Why? Because he hits every single criteria that we're looking for in the next offensive coordinator of the Washington Commanders. He's a proven teacher, has taught mobile quarterbacks before. Look at Josh Allen. Even Jackson Dart has worked with, Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston, not the most mobile guy in the world, but he certainly has some mobility, manufactures structure, which has been proven, and even recent red zone efficiency, even though the New York Giants have overall been struggling. And he creates explosiveness in his offenses historically, which, of course, Washington lacked a lot of in 2025. He's aggressive. He's a high ceiling hire that matches with Jayden Daniels' potential. Why he's the first guy on this list? Well, he's already walked the path that Washington is trying to travel down. He's taken a super talented but raw dual threat quarterback, turned him into an MVP, and he doesn't need to learn how to use Jayden because he already knows how to use quarterbacks with similar skill sets. He'll just have to learn the personality and all the things that make Jayden unique compared to the others. But as far as the skill set is concerned, knows how to employ it, and that already has been proven. And I think also there's a little bit of a bonus there that, yes, head coaches that are fired can get second opportunities, but it typically takes a little bit, right? So Brian Daboll isn't necessarily a guy like if the Commanders were to hire Brian Daboll and win the Super Bowl next year, while there might be some conversation amongst us about it, like usually NFL teams like to go try to find guys that aren't necessarily as recently fired from head coaching positions. Now I say that, and Kevin Stefanski, the recently fired head coach of the Cleveland Browns, is getting interviews this week for other head coaching positions with teams like the Titans and the Cardinals. And I even heard that he was in the running for perhaps the Giants job, which was Brian Daboll's old job. So he's our number two candidate in this group. And he's kind of basically the safe floor for this group, I think, for the entire offensive coordinator pool of talent. He's the master of structure. That's kind of what he's known for in his NFL offenses. He kind of answers the Adam Peters control the clock, right? Message. AP talked about wanting to control the clock more in the future, protect the quarterback. And like I said, he raises the floor of the offense. I think the ceiling is a little bit less high with a guy like him. He provides stability. He knows how to protect the football schematically. However, there are some questions about whether or not his scheme can be truly dynamic as much as they want it to be and explosive the way that they want it to be. So that is kind of the block that he doesn't necessarily check. He'll prevent you from losing, but he's also going to prevent you sometimes from having major wins. And of course, talked a lot with Spencer German of Locked On Browns about Kevin Stefanski. Very good scheme, just kind of falls short of being a great scheme quite often. And then number 3, we're actually going to stay in the Browns family. I felt no reason to push him to another episode. We're just going to stay in this Browns family, and it's Tommy Rees, the offensive coordinator of the Cleveland Browns, with Kevin Stefanski being fired. Typically staffs aren't necessarily retained. Tommy Rees called the Cleveland Browns offense for the last part of the 2025 season once Kevin Stefanski kind of gave up control of it, and the offense got better. Not only did they get better, they got more physical. They had more run concepts, a little bit of a modern collegiate type of flair to it. Tommy Rees is a younger offensive coordinator in the league, but he fits that run-first identity. He is the biggest projection here, though. So, and if you have this opinion or thought like year 3 is kind of the year, like Dan Quinn, could find his seat a lot warmer, a lot hotter if they don't make this thing happen in year 3, then obviously Tommy Rees would be a little bit more of a gamble than maybe Dan Quinn is willing to take. It's kind of when you look at the list of let's make sure we never go through this again, that was kind of the phrasing that Dan Quinn used in his end of season press conference. I don't know that Tommy Rees fills it, but he's a young, exciting type of offensive mind. I think he's got a bright future. I just don't know if he fits this situation as much as he fits the scheme, right? Run first, protect the ball. He has shown some ability to maybe craft up some more explosive things that maybe Stefanski has or is willing to. So that's why he's on this list as well. But again, I think the contextual matters really kind of bring him down on the list a little bit. So of the 3, he is our third of this first 3 group of offensive coordinators that we're going to look at. Now, the offensive coordinator, of course, has to coach the entire unit, right? It's the entire operation, of course, but make no mistake about it, it all starts with the quarterback, and that means you not only have to find the right guy for AP and Dan Quinn's style, you got to find the right guy for Jayden Daniels. That more is going to come up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The draft picks are set, and so many teams are looking for their franchise quarterback. And today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate Quarterback Football Legend. If you ever wished to become a pro quarterback, getting drafted first overall by the Washington Commanders, well, now you can. There's a mobile game just for you. It's called Ultimate Quarterback Football Legend. And in this game, you step into the cleats of a number 1 draft pick quarterback, and it's your job to lead that team to greatness, to help turn a failing franchise into a dynasty. And it is the number 1 quarterback career mode game in the mobile app store. And it introduces the most realistic environment with full career control. Sign contracts, train and upgrade yourself, build chemistry, evolve your teammates, give input to your GM on roster moves, play the actual games in 2D, and rise through the ranks to become a pro football legend. You'll deal with the ups and downs of a quarterback career, from rookie nerves to playoff drama, and every choice is going to shape your journey. It's totally free to play. Just head over to ultimate-quarterback.com. That's ultimate-quarterback.com and search for the Ultimate Quarterback in your app store. And we've got something special for just you. Use the promo code Locked On, all caps, in the game store and get a free boost at the start of your career. Ultimate Quarterback Football Legend QB1. It's your legacy. Today's episode of Locked On Commanders also brought to you by ZocDoc. Finding a doctor you actually like can feel like discovering a diamond in the rough. You want someone in your network nearby with availability, but you also want a doctor who really listens, makes you feel comfortable, explains things clearly, and helps you walk out feeling confident about your next step. It feels like something that everybody would want and expect in a doctor, but unfortunately, it's just not something you're going to get all the time. Your diamond in the rough doctor, however, does exist, and it makes it easier to find them when you use ZocDoc. ZocDoc is a free app and a website that helps you find and book high-quality in-network doctors so you can use someone you truly connect with. You search for specialty symptoms, quality, and all of that. You find the right fit. It's the best at getting in-person or video visits, which makes scheduling, of course, way easier. And you can check verified patient reviews to get a real sense of the doctor's vibe. So stop putting off those doctor's appointments. Go to ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNFL to find and instantly book a doctor you love today. That's ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNFL, ZocDocs.com/LockedOnNFL. Thanks to ZocDoc for sponsoring today's episode. Thank you for making Locked On Commanders your first listen of the day to the Everydayers. Those of you who come through for every single episode, a special thank you for you coming through for yet another one today. Thank you to everybody for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network in the world. And if you are an everydayer, a true everydayer, then the Everydayer All Access tier is built especially for you. You're going to get one-on-one text access with me, all access episodes, an exclusive newsletter, and a 15% discount to the Locked On merch store. Head to lockedoncommanders.supercast.com to join the Everydayer Club and unlock the All Access tier. You can also find a link in the show notes of this very episode on YouTube or on audio, wherever you are. The offensive coordinator, of course, is going to have to coach the entire unit, the entire side of the ball. But we all know this. It starts with the quarterback, and that means not only are you looking for the right coach, offensive coordinator that fits what Dan Quinn and Adam Peters want, you're finding the right guy for your quarterback, Jayden Daniels. And I think that there are 3 key traits to the next offensive coordinator that have to be met. And I think the first traits, and not necessarily in any order, right? You can argue over the semantics of which order these need to come in and all that kind of stuff, right? So trait number 1, not necessarily first most important or whatever you want to call it, but I do think it is pretty significant. In my mind, it might be the number 1 most important trait of the next offensive coordinator is the challenger mindset, expanding versus comfort, right? The next coach has to be able to push Jayden Daniels to expand his skill set, not just refine what he does already. We're not talking about asking him to do anything crazy. Again, you can take any piece of advice or any saying or anything that we try to do here and make it ridiculous if you really want to and take it to the extreme levels. That's not what we're talking about, right? We're talking about Jayden Daniels being the best version of Jayden Daniels that he can be. And you hear Kliff Kingsbury, not to beat a dead horse or kick a dead horse, trying to let bygones be bygones here, but this is the recent history, and it's an example of where Jayden Daniels is coming from. We've heard Kliff Kingsbury talk multiple times over the past couple of years about doing things that Jayden is comfortable with, letting him kind of pick what he wants to do and all these kinds of things. We've even gone so far as Coach Kingsbury to say that he's really just here along for the ride, and it's Jayden's ride. As a second-year quarterback, and even as a rookie quarterback last year, I don't think that's necessarily the right way to go about it. I'm not saying don't let your quarterback have input. I'm not saying don't let your quarterback, of course, have a voice in the room and all those things. But we don't have to go to the extreme where he's basically running the show, and the coach who's been doing this for quite a long time and has all these experiences and all these games under his belt and all this stuff shouldn't be along for the ride, quote unquote. Even Jayden Daniels himself said in his end of season interview with us, quote, I think that's the biggest thing is mentally, when you kind of look at the older guys in the league, like Stafford this year, that mental side, he knows what he's doing. And me and David Blau, the quarterback coach for now of the Washington Commanders, kind of talk about it like, what is your job in the mental side, that IQ? You want to grow that even more. So that's helped me out a lot being on the sideline, end quote. So growing that IQ, it takes pressure, right? Jayden is certainly getting a little bit of that experience being on the sideline, not being able to play as much this year as he wanted to, as we wanted him to. But there are other ways to apply that pressure, right? You always kind of talk about, you take a lump of coal, you apply pressure to it. One of 2 things are going to happen. It's either going to crumble or it's going to turn into a diamond. But you don't get a diamond without applying some pressure. You take a lump of coal and you just let it be a lump of coal, and you say, no, let me tuck you into your nice lump of coal bed. It's just going to stay a lump of coal. And listen, I'm not saying Jayden Daniels is a lump of coal, because lumps of coal always get a negative connotation and all this kind of stuff. But you understand the theory, or you understand the analogy, hopefully, that the way to get things out of people, the way to get the best out of people, is to apply a little bit of pressure to make them become their best selves, expand their skill set, all these things. So I think that you need that, but you need the right person. You can't just bring a guy in that's just going to yell, spit, and cuss and shoot fire out of his nose anytime anything bad happens. That's not what we're talking about. That's not applying pressure. That's just being an a-hole. And those are not the same things. Those are not synonyms. So Dan Quinn talking about he wants a teacher, not just a play caller. Quote, so communicate, collaborate, has a unique skill set to teach. I think that's like the number 1 top of the pile when you're teaching. You know, part of this is why you need to know the specific skill, end quote. That is exactly what you're looking for in this next offensive coordinator, someone who's going to expand Jayden's skill set, increase or improve his ability to execute the skill set he already has, communicate and teach, not just yell for the sake of yelling, not just stress for the sake of stressing, but for the sake of making Jayden Daniels, or help Jayden Daniels, I should say, become the diamond that I think most of us, if not all of us, believe he can become. Trait number 2 has to have a collaborative structure, collaboration, the art of bringing in ideas, but ultimately being in charge. And late in the season, we've talked about here on this show, if you're an everydayer, you're going to remember me going back and saying, look, I'm kind of not 100% certain if Kliff Kingsbury is really driving the ship on the offense as much as he's just simply calling plays, not necessarily with the command of the plays, of the repertoire, of the scheme that you would like him to have. So this coach needs to challenge Jayden, but he also needs to listen to Jayden. It's not a one-sided relationship. Kind of going back to ZocDoc, right? You go to a doctor's office, you don't want the doctor to just come in, poke, prod you, look at you, read your charts and your data, and say, boom, here's who you are and here's what you're going to do. I've dealt with that. I'm sure a lot of you have dealt with that. It's not a good way to have a relationship. You want a person, a coach, a trainer, a doctor, whoever it is, to hear what you're saying. It's got to be a little bit of a partnership, but there does have to be an understanding on who runs the partnership versus who's part of the partnership. So Jayden Daniels, on his desire for input this week, said, quote, I think we'll have that input in those kinds of dialogues. I don't know to what extent, but obviously offensively, I want to go out there and run the offense that I want to run and be super comfortable in it, end quote. And you, of course, understand every single part of that. Jayden Daniels, of course, wants to be comfortable in what he's doing on the field, and that's where the teaching comes in. It's not just about doing what he already knows how to do. It's about teaching him how to do things better, teach him how to do new things that maybe he's not comfortable with right now, but helping him get there, get to a comfortability. Listen, Jayden Daniels didn't come out of Little League or Pee Wee football as a Heisman Trophy quarterback. He wasn't comfortable enough in his skill set to win a Heisman Trophy coming out of high school. You have to continue to learn, persevere, have new experiences, work on them, have success in them. That's how you become comfortable. So just like he became comfortable being the quarterback he is now, you can add to that skill set, increase it, improve it, get that collaborative effort in there, and make him comfortable in there as well. So you want to respect Jayden, but you have to refuse to let him settle. You can't just sit here and say you're good enough. Good enough never won anything. You've never heard of a player that's in the Hall of Fame. You've never heard of a player that's known as one of the greatest ever to do it for a franchise or for a league who settled for good enough. And you can't have an offensive coordinator who's doing the same thing. And then finally, you need that structural support. You can't have it all just on Jayden. Yes, the offense is going to start with Jayden. Yes, the conversation is going to predicate around Jayden. But at the end of the day, this is the ultimate team sport. Football is the ultimate team sport more than any other sport in the world. The offense has to be quarterback friendly by design, but it also has to use other parts of it. Run game, personnel are going to make life a little bit easier. Adam Peters talked about this as well. He said, quote, it's running backs to control the ball and control the clock and not put it all on the shoulders and get on his shoulders, that is, and get in second and third and manageable. It's receivers that he can trust and throw to, so he's not holding on to the ball longer, getting a good defense on the other side, so he's not all of his shoulder. It's not all in his shoulders to win the game, end quote. The greatest quarterback, most accomplished quarterback to ever play the game, Tom Brady. His early career, they won those Super Bowls mostly with defense, had a lot of successful years with defense. Later on, they brought in a guy like Randy Moss. They went out and found Wes Welker. They went out and found Julian Edelman. They went out and found all these other guys. Tom Brady never did this thing alone. Jayden Daniels, he's got Terry. I feel like he's got a very good running back room. I think you may bring in one or two more pieces this offseason to that room. Sure, the tight end position I think needs to be addressed, and the offensive line is solid. No reason you can't go out there and see if there's a competitive edge that you can gain in that group. I think overall it's solid, and I do believe that there's a plan to bring back both Nick Allegretti and Andrew Wiley on top of the other guys they have, which gives you a very solid base for your offensive line moving into the season. So that is on Adam Peters. Dan Quinn's got to go find the right coordinator, the right offensive mind and teacher. And again, that's ultimately what I think that we're looking for here in the next offensive coordinator. Once the hire is made, we'll look at how that person matches up with these expectations. So that being said, I told you, Brian Daboll checks all the blocks. Let's take a closer look at Brian Daboll as the number one option from that list, starting with being the one who's controlling the ride instead of just being along for it. That coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode of Locked On Commanders brought to you in part by FanDuel. The wild card round is here, and FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. Every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action, because right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting for them inside the app. Each game day, you're going to see a pack loaded with multiple profit boosts so you can apply to the bets that you like the most. Open your profit boost pack first thing on game day and see what boost you want to apply. The boosts let you lean into your game day instincts, whether you're looking for momentum, if you're looking for defense, quarterback, player, coaching. The boost is going to give you more juice on your bets you already like instead of forcing you to bet on something new. So visit FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the National Football League, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day starting this wild card weekend. To wrap up today's episode of Locked On Commanders, let's take a closer look at what makes Brian Daboll the number one option from the list of candidates that we started off with, along with the traits that we are expecting this next offensive coordinator to have, and starts with the fact that Brian Daboll is going to be the one controlling the ride instead of just simply being along for the ride. I think that's really kind of the biggest thing with Brian Daboll that's going to separate him from any of the other offensive coordinator candidates. It's the teacher part of his program, right? We reached out to Patricia Traina of Locked On Giants. If you've seen crossover Thursdays throughout the season, you've seen Patricia Traina twice per year. We reached out to her. I asked her some questions. She responded to them, and she confirmed that Brian Daboll has that teacher mindset, especially when it comes to adaptability. She shares with us that when rookie Jackson Dart took over in 2025, Brian Daboll didn't force him to be a veteran. She noted that, quote, I think they did simplify it for Dart when he got in there. They tried to run as much as what he ran at Ole Miss to help him with the transition, end quote. This proves that Brian Daboll meets the quarterback where they are, fitting Dan Quinn's unique skill set to teach requirement. Now, you also look at Daboll's experience with Josh Allen. You do kind of the same thing. Start with where they're comfortable, grow them from there. Josh Allen's completion percentage jumped nearly 17 points over the 3 years he was with Brian Daboll. Teaches the IQ. He teaches the mental side, and that is the part of the game that's going to help Jayden Daniels unlock even more of himself. So I think that is block number one checked firmly. Brian Daboll's going to have to understand where Jayden is right now, obviously, all that kind of stuff. But as we progress through this process, I believe he's got the skill set to take where he is, take what he's done, not just from LSU, obviously, but also from his 2 years in the NFL, and then grow on top of that as well. The explosiveness, 2025, even in the season he got fired, his offense showed it could finish drives. Week 7 against the Philadelphia Eagles, they scored 31 points against a top-tier defense, including a 21-point fourth quarter run, directly addressing his team's ability to finish games. Red zone efficiency, go to week 3 against Cleveland. The unit generated 4 red zone trips, converted 75% of them. Cleveland Browns, you laugh at the Browns, arguably the best defense in the National Football League. So that evidence, boom, you check that block. And then the collaboration. Terry McLaurin emphasized the importance of dialogue in his end-of-season interview. So, quote, I think that's when you have success as an offense, when there's an open dialogue between players and coaches, end quote. That's something that Kliff Kingsbury did a really good job of doing. I think where Kliff Kingsbury went a little bit sideways was trying to incorporate everybody's voice as much as possible. You receive the intel, you digest the intel, you digest everything, you turn it into a scheme that emphasizes what they want, but doesn't necessarily get dictated by what they want. It just felt like nobody necessarily had both hands on the controls at times. Patricia Traina again noted that despite a tough season, Daboll held his room together better than previous Giants coaches did. Quote, in comparison to Ben McAdoo and Joe Judge, two guys who definitely lost the locker room, Daboll was steady, end quote. Brian Daboll never lost his locker room, never lost that edge of brotherhood, unity, all those things, even in a tough season. I think it's something that this team could certainly benefit from, not only benefit from, but falls in line with what Dan Quinn already has built in the building. And of course, it's already been pointed out several places, but in case you didn't know, Brian Daboll, Dan Quinn have experience working together in previous staffs. That's going to do it for today's episode. Next time on Locked On Commanders, we're going to do this, but we're going to flip to the defensive side of the ball, and then we'll continue looking at candidates as much as we need to until a hire is made to see if we can find out what's on the horizon for the Washington Commanders. So make sure you subscribe. Make sure you are following along Locked On Commanders so you get all the latest episodes. You can also follow me on X at DHarrison82 or on Instagram at DHarrison_82. And if you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club is built for you. Get Locked On Commanders ad-free, get member-only Discord access, and more. Go to lockedoncommanders.supercast.com to join the club today. For your second listen of the day, check out the Locked On NFL podcast twice per day, once in the morning, once in the afternoon on YouTube or wherever you're listening to today's episode. To the everydayers, I see you. I appreciate you every single day. To everybody, until next time, stay safe, be kind to one another. We'll talk again real soon right here on Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.